Good evening, everyone. I mentioned in the quite amateurish video I made from the airport on Sunday afternoon before leaving to come down to Orlando that I was going to take a look at the essentially some statistics from the discussion that you folks had in week one, where you looked at what are some really important issues in the ideas of sport economics, and I promised you a little bit of an update on that. And so I'm going to do that right now, and I also want to issue a bit of an apology for the discussion links for week two not being opened properly until this afternoon, this evening, in fact. So it was brought to my attention this afternoon. We kind of jumped on it and got it done. My apologies. It's a travel weekend, got competition day, a lot of things going on, and that one got by me. So that is my fault. You have my apologies, and I hope everything's working well now. Okay, here are the updates on what people thought about. Uh, Not surprisingly, with what's been in the news and what we're just about to go into at this time of year with the NCAA basketball tournament, what seemed to be on most people's minds was NCAA players, college basketball, college football primarily, but college athletes getting paid rather than just being on scholarship. And that was kind of the leading vote getter. That had 11 mentions out of 13, so that's quite up there. The other ones, I did group a couple of things together here. The next most common mention was issues of salary levels and contract lengths and commitments in professional sports, about the fact that they are reaching some astronomical highs, and that was viewed by a number of people, 7 in fact, as one of the issues we need to discuss. Lumping together fantasy sports and gambling, that got 4. And that, I think, is a big one that we need to look at, because, like many things, it has changed the face of how we consume and look at sports over particularly broadcast mechanisms. So that's a big one. I thank people for bringing that up. And then we had several with multiple mentions each, multiple being 2 and more. Globalization of sports, and for everything from the NFL scheduling games in foreign countries to the globalization of competitions in soccer and other sports like that. That came up. The idea of a lot of the protests we've seen around social justice issues, and did that have an impact in sports? And in some ways that got mentioned kind of peripherally too, and a couple of other things. 2 mentions of something I think that are very significant, and we'll see more significance in years to come, but is the wage disparity between men's and women's sports. So like a lot of industries, sports is not exempt from that issue. In fact, the wage disparities may be even more glaring in sports than they are in some more common fields of endeavor. And then we also had a couple of mentions about player development, and by that I mean players at the youth level, young people getting involved in sports, and parental involvement, and how is that going to affect the future of these sports. So, again, I think these are very important issues. Finally, we had some things in there about technology. Technology is big. Technology has changed the way, again, we consume our sports, and we see people like ESPN actually going through some employment turmoil as they look to see how they can reposition themselves in order to deliver the product over different media, particularly the streaming technologies and a lot of things that are different than before. We hear about the phenomena of people cutting the cable with television. It's had tremendous impact on the sports world and the business of sports. And endorsements brought up, corporate involvement, player conduct, not contact, conduct, off the field issues, as we like to refer to them, and then government involvement in sports in several ways. I also think I forgot to mention, because it was there when I was compiling the data. Yeah, here it is up the top list. Public financing of sports facilities. When a community or state or a city gets involved in financing, say, a new stadium or something like that. Huge issues. We're going to try to cover as many of them as we can, and I'm going to adjust some things so that we can spend some time on the things that were mentioned more often. And I think that'll help us have a more meaningful course, because it'll be about things that we're seeing in the newspapers and hearing on the radio and watching on television every day. So thank you all for your participation in that last week. It's really important for the way we do it, and it's indicative of the kind of thinking, the big picture thinking that I've been asking everybody to do, and I think you've all pulled that off pretty well. So again, thank you. Try to keep up with things as best I can from here in Orlando this week with all the my coaching activity going on, and trying to keep up with the course. Gonna do what I can. I know you guys will do your best. Thanks again. Good night.